KUAM News Headlines is presented by Calvo's Insurance, a legacy of trust, serving Micronesia since 1938. Matson celebrating 25 years of commitment to Guam, Micronesia, and the CNMI. Cars Plus, home of Guam's first and only lifetime powertrain warranty. Visit carsplusguam.com for details. McDonald's of Guam, I'm loving it, and King's Restaurant, serving your local breakfast, lunch, and dinner favorites for over 45 years.
Coming up on Primetime, lawmakers react to a pair of public hearings regarding the malpractice arbitration law and the bill that aims to amend it. Plus, how is the island economy faring? Not bad, but things could be much better. And the 5th batch of winners are announced for the Vax to Win program.
Hafaday and good evening, everyone. After a pair of marathon public hearings, the focus is shifting from the pros and cons of amending the mandatory malpractice arbitration law to reaching a compromise that suits both sides. Here's more. With some time passing since the emotional hearing, several senators appeared on the link and shared their reactions.
I was encouraged that a lot more of the doctors are recognizing that there is a need for a change in the current arbitration because of the costs, and that they are willing to address that. And that's huge, because at first it sounded like, you know, a lot of them were denying that there was a problem.
I think that we still need to focus on one main goal that we're trying to do, is find accessibility for everybody in any walks of life to be able to ask themselves to justice.
For the most part, each side in the divisive issue has made their positions clear.
The question now is, how do we go about that? How do we find a common middle ground that we can agree on?
The medical community has proposed several solutions, in particular finding a way to fund arbitration for those who can't afford it. But Minority Leader Chris Duenas has identified what he believes motivated the health professionals from the start.
If it's the mandatory arbitration that they say has been what has been the gatekeeper, if you will, with regard to screening malpractice cases, then let's boil that down, right? Is that really what it is? And if so, how do we enhance that process?
Sponsor Terlahi suggests there's room to maneuver.
Do they want to take the same type of arbitration, or are they willing to go through the Guam arbitration law, which allows the parties to decide the type of arbitration, right? Second is, are they willing to allow mediation, which our bill does, or do they want to preclude that? And when they say we are going to mandate arbitration, that means only arbitration, not mediation, not a screening panel, only arbitration. And so that's the difference.
Terlahi is planning to continue the dialogue through roundtable meetings and another hearing. The schedule has not yet been set. Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment claimants will have to file proof that they're looking for a job. Labor Director David De La Sola says claimants must perform 3 work searches a week to remain eligible for PUA and FPUC benefits. He says it's also a good way to prepare them for when the unemployment assistance ends on September 4th.
You know, people are saying, I've heard it. Well, there's no jobs out there. There's a lot of jobs. Is there enough jobs for everybody? No, there's not enough jobs for everybody. But there are jobs out there. And it's not that you have to get a job every week. It's that you just have to do a job search. You have to get up and get out. You can't just sit there and complain that there's no work for you. You know, government can only carry you so far.
GDOL will release a video soon outlining the process. There are multiple ways to make work search contacts, including registering on the HireGuam.com website or visiting the American Job Center in Anigua. Several groups are exempt. These include employees working reduced hours, those in an approved job training program, and the self-employed working to reestablish their businesses. The economy is doing better than expected, but it's still not doing well. That was the assessment of Bank of Guam Chief Economist Joe Bradley in remarks today before a local business group. No surprise, says Bradley, because the pandemic has hit every economy pretty hard. Interviewed after his speech at the Rotary Club, he said perhaps the biggest challenge now and going forward, inflation, the rising prices of just about everything.
There are a couple of reasons for that. One is the supply chain disruptions that are raising manufacturing costs, the costs of goods in particular, but also services. And in Guam's particular case, we've got fuel prices are just going through the roof. Sit precariously on a two-legged stool of tourism and military spending. Both industries are unstable.
He says Guamanians are heavily dependent on fuel for everything from electricity and to gas our cars. He adds that 40% of the economy relies on tourism, which has been virtually non-existent and is only now poised for a long, slow recovery. We have managed to weather the COVID storm, but by the grace of federal pandemic assistance.
Well, I think that kept our economy afloat, in fact, in reasonably good condition. If I remember the numbers correctly, our economy has been rising to about $5.6 billion annually. So $3.5 billion kind of fills in that great big gap.
So what happens if and when the mana from Washington runs out?
Let me see. The last thing on my notes here said, I don't know. I think that actually that Congress is going to be more selective in their targeting of stimulus, but I think because we're so heavily dependent upon tourism that we may be in the group that gets a continuation of some of the programs we've been experiencing.
Knock on wood, says Bradley. Knock on wood. An administrative investigation has been launched at the Guam Police Department after 3 employees, including a sworn police officer, were booked and released for driving while impaired. According to a media release on June 24th of this year, GPD Chief Stephen Ignacio was made aware of an incident involving 26-year-old Rachel Bachman, 30-year-old Rhea Sanchez, and 28-year-old Karina Paulino. Through the course of the investigation, it was learned that all 3 had consumed alcohol throughout the night and were in control of a vehicle. The case has been forwarded to the Attorney General's office for possible prosecution. And a Superior Court grand jury has indicted Nicholas Wayne Moore for a drive-by shooting on October 15th in Agana Heights. He was officially charged with aggravated assault, terrorizing, and possession of an unregistered firearm and is scheduled to be arraigned on August 13th. According to the magistrate's complaint, Moore was driving his black Ford 150 with another passenger. He allegedly shot at an individual identified as BM at the Agana Heights basketball court. But BM later told detectives that he believed the intended target was an individual named identified as CAG because he stole money from Moore. Detectives learned of Moore's alleged involvement in the drive-by shooting during an investigation into the suspected murder of Michael Castro, who had been missing. Moore is also a suspect in that case and was arrested in Florida last month. An indictment has not yet been returned. It wasn't the typical sentencing of a drug dealer in district court. After the hearing, Chief Judge Francis Tidinko Gatewood issued a written decision and order calling out the U.S. Attorney's Office and federal law enforcement agencies. This was over the handling of information provided by the defendant as part of a plea agreement that he thought would lead to a lower sentence. Here's more.
It was in December 2019. Richard Gappison Jr. was busted after attempting to pick up a package at the Guam main facility in Barrigada. The package contained over 1,000 grams of meth with a street value of over $500,000. His arrest was caught on camera with the video making its rounds on social media. Gappison eventually signed a plea agreement to provide additional information on other cases in exchange for a lesser sentence. Tuesday's hearing marked the 8th attempt at his sentencing. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. After the hearing, however, Judge Gatewood issued a decision and order publicly criticizing the handling of his case by the U.S. Attorney's Office and federal law enforcement agencies involved in the investigation. According to the 15-page order, Gappison, as part of his plea deal, cooperated by providing names and detailed information of more than 12 individuals alleged to be involved in the local drug trade. The information included phone numbers, maps of their homes, license plate numbers, and information of his on-island and off-island suppliers. He also provided information relating to 3 potential public corruption activities on Guam, including details about criminal activities in which local government employees in 3 separate government entities may be committing. The chief judge noted in her order that federal law enforcement agencies weren't sharing information, communicating, and for the most part, Gappison's information went unvetted for its value. Gaywood went so far as singling out Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephen Leon Guerrero and DEA resident agent in charge Ken Bowman for their lack of courtroom decorum, candor, and leadership in handling this case. Quote, "First and foremost, both individuals displayed unprofessional conduct during several of the sentencing hearings. Rather than responding to the court's questions, they both appeared to be nonchalant, with both going so far as laughing for unknown reasons during their testimony and argument," unquote. Although Leon Guerrero was noted as